Hello everyone. I'm so happy to see you all back on my channel. Today, I bring you an emotional new episode, continuing the love story between CEO James and LyTuDiep. As you may remember from the previous episode, Diep fell seriously ill and was unable to keep the baby in her womb. To save her life, the doctors had to make the most heartbreaking decision. Throughout those painful days, James stayed by her side, caring for her, comforting her, and helping her endure the loss. After the surgery, Diep was taken home to rest. However, her condition began to show dangerous complications. Will James be able to protect the woman he loves once again? And could a miracle possibly appear amid the storms of fate? Join me in today's video to witness the latest chapter in this tearful yet deeply moving journey of love and resilience between James and LyTuDiep. Don't forget to like, share, and leave a comment to support our two beloved characters. After many days of treatment, Diep was finally allowed to leave the hospital. That morning, the sky was a rare clear blue after endless days of gloomy rain. James helped her step slowly out of the car, guiding her down the brick path that led to the front gate. Each step she took felt like a milestone, marking her return from the shadow of illness that they had fought through together. At the porch, Mrs. Huyn and little Nee were already waiting. Their eyes fixed anxiously on the gate, a mix of longing and worry. When they finally saw James supporting Diep as she approached, Nee squealed in delight, her voice ringing like a bell. "Miss Diep, you're home!" That innocent cry seemed to light up the entire yard. Mrs. Huyn hurried over, grasped Diep's hands, tears glistening on her gentle face. "I'm so glad you're home, my dear," she whispered. The small wooden house that day was filled with warmth. The comforting aroma of food drifted from the kitchen, chicken porridge, specially made by Mrs. Huyn early that morning for Diep. Nee's laughter mingled with the soft clinking of spoons against the pot, creating a humble yet heartwarming melody of home. James stood by the window, watching Diep seated amid that peaceful scene, and a sense of relief washed over him. All the fear and anxiety from the hospital days seemed to fade away. He felt only gratitude that she was still here, still breathing, still smiling. By late afternoon, the sun's final rays streamed through the thin curtains, casting a gentle glow on Diep's pale face. She rested her head on James's shoulder, her voice weak but warm. "I feel like I've been given a new life, having you, Mother, and little Nee by my side. I'm so happy." James said nothing. He simply held her hand, that fragile hand that made him cherish her even more. In his eyes was a deep tenderness, and an unspoken promise that he would protect her, no matter what. Night slowly fell. The house sank into stillness, filled only with the sound of insects outside and the steady rhythm of breathing inside. James gently pulled the blanket over Diep, kissed her forehead, and lay beside her. A cool breeze slipped in through the window, carrying the faint scent of night grass, soft and serene. But that peace didn't last long. In the middle of the night, Diep suddenly woke with a sharp pain in her abdomen. She gasped, clutching her stomach, her face pale, cold sweat pouring down. She gripped James's hand tightly, her voice trembling. "James, it hurts so much." Startled, he quickly helped her lie down, his hands shaking as he dialed for an ambulance. The shrill ring echoed through the quiet night, like a terrifying alarm breaking the silence. Hearing the commotion, Mrs. Huyn rushed out, holding little Nee in her arms. Her voice trembled as she saw her son frantically tending to Diep. "Oh my God, what's happening?" Outside, a light drizzle began to fall. The flashing red and blue lights of the ambulance painted streaks across the cold, wet darkness. James carried Diep in his arms, breathing hard, clutching her limp body as if letting go would mean losing her forever. The ambulance door slammed shut. Mrs. Huyn stood frozen at the doorway, holding Nee tightly against her chest. The flashing lights reflected on their faces, one filled with fear, the other with innocent confusion. The vehicle sped off into the rainy night, leaving behind an empty yard, where the sound of rain mingled with the heavy, aching heartbeats of those left behind. The next morning, the first rays of sunlight slipped through the hospital window, casting a soft glow on Diep's pale face. She lay still, her breathing faint, her skin almost translucent, as if she had just survived a long and exhausting battle. James sat quietly beside her bed, his eyes rimmed with fatigue and redness after a sleepless night. With gentle care, he used a warm towel to wipe the sweat from her forehead, then slowly helped her sit up to take her medicine. Every movement was tender, deliberate, as though he feared a single careless touch might cause her pain. The doctor entered, his voice calm yet reassuring. Her condition relapsed because her body is still weak and her mind hasn't fully recovered. Fortunately, she was brought in on time. With proper rest and treatment, she'll get better soon. James finally exhaled a quiet sigh of relief, though worry still lingered in his eyes. He bowed his head gratefully, then turned back to Diep. Taking her frail hand into his, he silently prayed that this time, the storm would truly pass. In the days that followed, James hardly ever left the hospital room. He tended to Diep's every need, wiping her face, brushing her hair, and feeding her spoonful by spoonful of light porridge. Sometimes Diep would look at him, her eyes glistening. "You've been working so hard." But James only smiled, his voice soft as a whisper. "As long as you get better, nothing else matters." When she finally drifted into sleep, he would quietly step out to handle the paperwork. The hospital corridor stretched endlessly under the cold white lights, his thin figure moving slowly with a stack of documents in his arms. The nurses had grown used to that sight, the devoted husband who never complained, his quiet dedication touching everyone who saw him. The situation became even more complicated when James had to deal with Diep's paperwork. Her household registration was still tied to her ex-husband's family, which made insurance and transfer procedures incredibly difficult. Yet James never uttered a single word of complaint. He patiently went from one office to another, asking questions, signing forms, and making sure every step was done properly. He knew that the calmer he stayed, the more peace Diep would feel. That afternoon, after everything was finally settled, James returned to the room. She was still asleep, her breathing shallow, her face pale but peaceful. He sat down beside her, gently placing his hand over hers and gazing at her for a long while, eyes filled with love and unwavering resolve. In his heart, only one silent promise echoed. "No matter how hard things get, I will never let you suffer again." That afternoon, sunlight streamed softly through the thin white curtains, casting a golden glow across the tiled floor and the hospital bed where Diep lay. The gentle light wasn't harsh, just enough to make the stark white hospital room feel a little warmer. A faint breeze slipped in through the window, carrying with it the scent of freshly cut grass and the familiar trace of disinfectant. A soft, polite knock sounded at the door, gentle, yet full of affection. James looked up, and Diep turned her head slightly toward the sound. The door opened, and Mrs. Huynh stepped in, her movements careful and deliberate. In her hands was a basket of fresh fruit and a pot of steaming chicken porridge wrapped in cloth to keep it warm. Beside her was little Nee, her cheeks flushed with excitement, her hair tied into two neat ponytails with tiny ribbons, the very ones Diep had once given her. "My dear, you're looking so much better today," Mrs. Huynh said softly, her voice full of tenderness and emotion. She set the basket down on the table and gently placed a hand on Diep's shoulder, a touch both warm and comforting, like that of a mother. She looked at Diep for a long moment, her eyes filled with love and gratitude. Every time she heard news of Diep's illness, her heart would ache. But today, seeing the young woman sitting up with a faint blush on her cheeks, all she felt was a deep sense of relief. The moment little Nee saw Diep, she exclaimed in her sweet, ringing voice. "Miss Diep, you have to get well soon so you can come play with me again. I missed you so much." Then the child ran up and threw her arms around Diep's arm. That small, innocent warmth made Diep tremble with emotion. She smiled weakly but tenderly, her eyes glistening. "Okay, I promise. I'll get better soon so I can come play with you, alright?" Nee tilted her head up, her bright black eyes shining with joy. "You have to promise. I'll tie your hair too, I'll make it so pretty, just like mine." Her innocent words made everyone laugh. James, who had been sitting quietly nearby, finally felt the tension in his face ease after so many days of worry. He watched the scene before him, his mother and the little girl joyfully fussing over Diep, and felt something inside him unclench. Mrs. Huyn chuckled as she lifted the lid of the pot. The aroma of hot chicken porridge filled the room, chasing away the sterile chill of the hospital. "With the two of you here," she joked lightly, "this place doesn't feel cold anymore. It's like being home." James helped her serve a bowl, setting it gently in front of Diep. "Here, eat a little. Mom made it just for you," he said softly. Diep smiled faintly, nodding, and took a spoonful. She looked at Mrs. Huyn and little Nee, her eyes misting again. She had never imagined that one day, she would be surrounded by such simple, genuine affection. Nee's laughter echoed through the room, mingling with the soft clinking of the spoon against the porcelain bowl. Outside the window, the midday breeze rustled through the trees, carrying with it the scent of sunlight, damp earth, and the rhythm of life itself. The once sterile hospital room now felt alive, warm, human, like a little home nestled within the cold walls of medicine. James sat quietly, watching the three of them, his mother, the woman he loved, and the little girl who brought light into their lives. A gentle smile spread across his face, the first real smile Diep had seen in days. In that moment, all the exhaustion, the sleepless nights, the worry, they all melted away. All that remained in his heart was gratitude, gratitude that Diep was still here, breathing, smiling, living. That small hospital room, bathed in the golden light of noon, suddenly became the warmest place in the world. No sound of machines, no sterile scent of medicine, only love, simple yet powerful enough to melt away every pain. By late afternoon, the golden sunlight streamed through the hospital window, spreading warm streaks across the tiled floor. James took little Nee out to buy dinner. The two walked hand in hand down the quiet hallway, chatting softly, their laughter echoing faintly through the stillness. Nee's eyes sparkled with joy, she was so proud to help buy food for Miss Diep. A little while later, they returned. James carried a warm food bag in one hand, while Nee carefully held a small carton of milk. Mrs. Huyn had already set the table, and Diep sat propped against her pillow, gazing toward the window. When she saw them step in, a gentle smile curved on her lips. No one said much, but their eyes spoke volumes, full of warmth, gratitude, and love. The four of them gathered around the small hospital table. There was nothing fancy, just simple boxed rice, a few boiled vegetables, some hot soup, and slices of braised pork. Yet within that simplicity lay tenderness in every gesture. James opened the meal box, gently picked up a piece of egg for Diep, and said softly, "Try this, Nee picked it for you." Nee immediately chimed in, her voice bright and cheerful. "I picked the egg 'cause it's your favorite. Eat a lot, okay? If you finish it, you'll get all better." Her innocent words made everyone laugh. Diep looked at the little girl, her eyes shimmering with emotion. She took a small spoonful of rice, forcing herself to eat even though the taste of medicine still lingered bitterly in her mouth. Each time she swallowed a bite, Nee clapped her hands and giggled softly, as if cheering her on with all her heart. Mrs. Huyn sat nearby, eating slowly while watching the tender scene, her face glowing with quiet joy. James said nothing. He simply looked at the three people before him, his mother, the woman he loved, and his little daughter, and felt his heart soften. The room was filled with the golden light of dusk, the sound of Nee's laughter blending with the gentle clinking of spoons, creating a melody of everyday life, simple, yet profoundly comforting. In that moment, James realized that happiness didn't need grandeur or promises. It could be as small as a shared meal, a kind smile, and the presence of those he loved. All the exhaustion and worry seemed to fade away, leaving behind only a quiet peace, like the afternoon sunlight gently resting on their shoulders. By the time they were about to leave, the sky outside the window had turned a soft shade of violet. The fading sunset left behind streaks of light that slipped through the curtains, casting a golden hue across the bed where Diep lay. The room was quiet and warm, filled only with the gentle hum of the ventilation fan, the faint scent of medicine, and the lingering aroma of chicken porridge. Mrs. Huyn began packing up the fruit basket and covering the half pot of porridge that remained. After giving James a few gentle reminders, she turned back to Diep. Her gaze lingered, tender, worried, full of affection, like a mother reluctant to part with her daughter after a short visit. Diep reached out and held her hand, her weak fingers trembling, but her eyes glistened with gratitude. Her voice came out soft and unsteady. "Thank you, Mom. If it weren't for you and little Nee, I don't think I would have had the strength to make it through." At those words, Mrs. Huyn smiled faintly, her eyes moist. She tightened her hold on Diep's hand, her voice deep and gentle, like a lullaby. "Don't say that, dear. I already think of you as my own daughter. When God takes something away from us, it's to remind us to cherish what remains. You still have your health, and someone who loves you by your side, that means you already have everything." Her words fell slowly, tenderly, like warm notes seeping into the heart. Diep stayed silent, tears rolling quietly down her pale cheeks. She could only nod, overwhelmed, feeling small, loved, and deeply grateful within that embrace of kindness. Mrs. Huyn leaned down and pressed a gentle kiss on Diep's forehead, soft, motherly, and full of affection. Seeing that, little Nee eagerly climbed up to the edge of the bed and planted a quick kiss on Diep's cheek, giggling. "Get well soon, Miss Diep. Then I can teach you how to tie your hair even prettier, okay?" Laughter filled the white hospital room, light, pure, and full of warmth. James stood nearby, silently watching his mother, his daughter, and the woman he loved. His heart swelled with emotions too deep for words, love, gratitude, and a quiet sense of peace. As Mrs. Huyn and little Nee prepared to leave, Diep watched them through the window. Her eyes softened under the dimming evening light. Out in the hallway, their shadows stretched long beneath the golden lamps, slowly fading into the distance, leaving behind a gentle stillness. Diep leaned back against her pillow, a faint smile on her lips. Though her body still ached with exhaustion, her heart felt lighter, as if it had been quietly cleansed. Because she knew that even amid loss, she was still surrounded by love, still protected, and still had faith to keep on living. When the room felt quiet again, the dim light cast a soft glow over the cold tiled floor. James stepped gently toward the bed, holding a steaming bowl of porridge in his hands. He set the tray down on the table, his voice tender and a little embarrassed. "I bought the wrong one, beef porridge. I forgot you can't eat that." Diep smiled faintly, a weak, tired smile, yet still as kind as ever. "It's all right," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "You eat it. As long as you're here with me, that's enough." James looked at her, his gaze sinking. He knew she wasn't saying that because she wasn't hungry, but because she didn't want him to worry, didn't want him to feel tired. These past days had drained her so much that even sitting up made her dizzy, Yet she still forced a smile, just to ease his heart. A moment of silence passed. Outside, the night breeze rustled through the curtains, carrying the faint sound of leaves swaying. Then Diep turned to him, her voice small and trembling, barely loud enough for the two of them to hear. "If one day, your wife is always sick, can't do anything, can't even get out of bed, would you still be able to stand it?" James froze for a few seconds. Then he let out a quiet laugh, soft, gentle, full of warmth. He looked at her, his tone deep but steady. "I could stand anything, as long as that person is you." The words were simple, but they made Diep burst into tears. A crystal-clear drop slid down her thin cheek. She reached out and clasped his hand, that large, warm hand that had once trembled in fear as he carried her through the storm to the hospital, that had trembled out of terror at losing her, and that Al still held hers, steady, strong, the only anchor she could ever trust again. Neither of them spoke. The small hospital room sank into silence, filled only with the faint yellow light and the ticking of a clock. Then, as if to chase away the heaviness in their hearts, their minds drifted back, to the day they first met. Back then, Diep had been a frail, struggling woman, making a living selling bundles of firewood at the market. Her days were spent under the burning sun or cold rain, her roughened hands covered in calluses, her clothes always stained with ash. Her ex-husband had not only abandoned her but treated her with disdain, forcing her to endure each day with quiet strength. James, at the time, was a young director sent to work on a development project in the countryside, busy, ambitious, and far removed from the hardships of rural life. He had never imagined that his path would cross with someone like her. But one cold rainy afternoon, he saw her, sitting by her firewood stall, soaked to the bone, yet still managing a smile for each passing customer. He didn't know why, but he stopped. And in that downpour, he bought every bundle of wood she had, not because he needed them, but because he wanted her to go home, to escape the rain just a little sooner. It was such a small act, fleeting even, yet it left an imprint on Diep's heart forever. She remembered the raindrops running down her face, and that warm look in his eyes, the look that made her feel seen amid a world that had long turned its back on her. "Maybe God sent you to save me," she whispered, her gaze distant, as though reliving that moment long ago. James shook his head gently, a soft smile forming. "No," he said quietly but firmly, "you're the one who saved me. Because until I met you, I never truly knew what love was." Diep went still. She tightened her grip on his hand, feeling the warmth spread from his palm all the way to her heart. Outside, the night had deepened. The dim golden light from the lamp bathed them both in a soft glow. They sat together in silence, eyes locked, hearts open, and in that fragile, wordless moment, it felt as if all the pain they had endured had finally been soothed. Because in the end, love was the only medicine powerful enough to heal every wound. The next morning, the sky was an almost unreal shade of blue, clear, calm, and full of promise. Sunlight slipped gently through the window, brushing across Diep's sleeping face. The steady footsteps of the doctor echoed down the hallway before stopping at their door. After a short examination, he smiled kindly and said in a warm, reassuring tone, "Ms. Diep's condition is stable now. Just a few more days of observation, and she can go home to rest." The entire room seemed to brighten. James stood beside the bed, his eyes filled with relief and hope after so many dark, weary days. He leaned down, taking Diep's frail hand into his, and spoke softly, his voice deep, steady, yet trembling with emotion. "I'll take a few more days off. I'm not leaving your side. When you're better, we'll go back to the farm. I'll take care of everything, all you need to do is live peacefully." Diep looked up at him, her eyes shimmering in the morning light. She nodded gently, a faint, genuine smile curling her lips, calm and tender like the dawn mist. In that moment, she could feel the warmth radiating from his hand, the same warmth that had pulled her back from the edge between life and death. For the first time in days, she felt no fear, only love, safety, and the quiet joy of being alive. Outside, the sunlight had fully risen. The curtain swayed lightly in the breeze, letting golden rays fall across Diep's pale but peaceful face. Mrs. Huyn stood silently in the corner, watching them with eyes full of quiet happiness. Little Me sat perched on the edge of the bed, humming softly, her tiny hand clutching Diep's, as if afraid she might disappear if she let go. A little later, James helped Diep walk slowly down the hospital corridor. The tiles were still damp from last night's rain, reflecting the morning light like tiny shards of glass. He matched her slow pace, steady and patient beside her. Every step, every breath felt like the beginning of something new, a new chapter without sickness, filled only with peace and love. As the sunlight touched her skin, Diep thought, perhaps every pain, every loss in life has its reason. For without the storms, how could one ever truly appreciate the sun that follows? James's voice broke the gentle silence, low and heartfelt, as if speaking the words she hadn't yet found. There are pains that make us think we'll never stand again. But it's love and kindness that bring us back to life. Because sometimes, miracles don't come from magic, but from those who choose to stay beside us, through the storms and the calm alike. Diep rested her head on his shoulder, her eyes fixed on the bright light at the end of the corridor, where a new journey awaited. A journey of hope, of healing, and of love reborn after the storm. Stay tuned for the next episode, as Diep and James return to the farm, beginning a new chapter filled with hope and new beginnings.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Hôm nay thì mình đang làm tập tiếp theo của video về câu chuyện của COG và Lý Tử Diệp. Này mọi người, hiện tại thì vẫn đang trong quá trình edit và chưa có xong. Hôm nay thì James và Diệp thì đang quay lại bệnh viện đó mọi người, vì bệnh tình của Diệp đang chuyển biến ngày càng phức tạp hơn, vì thế nên cả hai phải quay lại bệnh viện. Mọi người thân mến, nếu như mọi người yêu quý kênh của mình cũng như là yêu quý nhân vật James và Diệp thì mọi người hãy đăng ký kênh, sau đó bật chuông thông báo lên để không bỏ lỡ bất kỳ video nào mọi người nhé. Và mọi người ơi, nếu như mà theo dõi kênh của mình nhiều thì mọi người cũng biết là kênh của mình thường sẽ lên nội dung quản lý Tử Diệp, còn lâu lâu thì mình cũng sẽ lên nội dung quản lý Hoài Ca nữa, nên là mong mọi người sẽ ủng hộ cho kênh mình nhiều và nhiều hơn nữa, và mọi ý kiến đóng góp mọi người có thể để lại ở phần bình luận mọi người nhé. Và hãy nhớ nút like cho video nha. Chào tạm biệt mọi người, hẹn gặp lại trong những video tiếp theo. Bye bye.